I'm going to talk a little bit about blood groups and blood types in this discussion. I think a lot of you have already heard of, if you don't already know your own blood type, you hear things like A negative or A positive and things of that nature. And in this discussion, we're going to talk about where that overall blood type actually comes from. Now, this is kind of a small window into the overall blood typing because there's other factors that will be involved, but for our purposes in this class, this kind of gives you an overview of where blood types, what they're based upon. And to start the discussion, we need to have a quick talk about some principles that come from the field of immunology. And the first thing I want to define for you is what we call an antigen. In immunology, antigens essentially are cell surface markers. They serve to identify cells. That's what they do. They're usually going to be a series of proteins and carbohydrates, and they're different from person to person. They're different from species to species. And these antigens, once again, are cell surface markers that serve to identify a cell. Now, our immune system is our body's defense system. It basically looks at antigens and tries to determine if a cell or a molecule that has those antigens comes from our own body, in which it should leave that particular cell or molecule alone, or if it comes from outside of our body. In other words, if it's foreign. And if it's a foreign molecule or a foreign cell displaying these foreign antigens, then our body should try to destroy it. Now, one of the things that our body does to try to destroy these foreign materials, these cells and molecules that have these foreign antigens, it starts to produce, our body that is, it starts to produce a new molecule called an antibody. And antibodies classically are defined as chemical complements. And these chemical complements are complements to the antigen that they're designed for. Ultimately, what happens is that antibody produced by our immune system is capable of binding to the antigen of the foreign material, and the combination of the antigen and antibody tells our immune system, destroy that molecule or destroy that cell. So essentially what you need is an antigen and an antibody in order to target a particular cell or target a given molecule for destruction. Now, why does this all relate to blood types and blood groups? Well, it's all about antigens at the end of the day. That is what allows us to name or identify a given blood type. So let's take a look at the image here on the screen, and you're going to see we're going to deal with first something called the ABO blood group. The ABO blood group is where the letter or letters of a person's blood type come from. And in the ABO blood group, there are two possible antigens. You either have the A antigen, the B antigen, the combination of both, or neither. And if you look closely, the antigen or antigens that are present or not present ultimately allow us to name that person's blood type. So, for an individual whose blood type is A, we're saying that their red blood cells only have A antigen on the surface of those cells. For an individual who's type B, they would only have the B antigen. For an individual whose blood type is AB, they have both the A and B antigens. And for an individual who is type O, they have neither the A or B antigen. I always tell people to think O, no antigen. So O is for no antigens. So that's the antigen side of things when it comes to the ABO blood group. A antigen, type A blood. B antigen, type B blood. A and B antigen, type AB blood. No antigens, you're type O. Now on the antibody side of things, the rule of thumb is this. You make antibodies to the antigen that you do not have. So in the ABO group, you make antibodies to the antigen or antigens that you do not have, and you do this basically from birth. So when we look at it, people who are type A do not have the B antigen, so they make anti-B antibodies. People who are type B don't have the A antigen, so they make anti-A antibodies. If we look at people who are type AB, the rule of thumb is you make antibodies to whatever antigens you don't have. Well, there's only two possible antigens, A or B. People who are type AB have both. So since they have both, there's nothing that they lack, so they make no antibodies. And that goes back to the rule that we talked about earlier. You have to have the antigen come in contact with this antibody in order to have an issue. So if people who are type AB made anti-A antibodies, that could react with the A antigen. That would be a negative situation. And if they made anti-B antibodies, they would still have the B antigen, and those antibodies could react with the B antigen. Once again, a negative situation. If we look at people who are type O, well, they don't have either the A or B antigen, so they make both anti-A and anti-B antibodies. So that's the antibody side of things when it comes to the ABO blood groups. Now, the positive and negative that you hear associated with the blood type doesn't have anything to do with the ABO group. Instead, it deals with the RH blood group. In the RH blood group, the RH stands for rhesus. The rhesus is an antigen found on the surface of some people's red blood cells, and it's pretty straightforward. If you have the rhesus antigen, you would be what we call RH positive. If you don't have the rhesus antigen, you would be RH negative. So saying a person is A positive tells me that in the ABO group, you have A antigen, and when it comes to the RH antigen, you do have it present. If you said an individual was A negative, that would tell me that that individual has the A antigen in the ABO group and lacks the RH antigen when it comes to the RH blood group. So that's the breakdown of where these come from. Now let's talk for a second about the antibodies with the RH antigen. If you paid attention when I talked to you about ABO antibodies, I told you make those shortly from birth. But with the RH antigen, that is not going to be the case. You don't necessarily make RH antibodies from birth. There's got to be two criteria that are fulfilled in order to make RH antibodies. First, the person must be RH negative. People who are RH positive never make RH antibodies. It's incompatible with life. Second, you must be exposed to RH positive blood. Meet those two criteria and the individual will create RH antibodies. Now, one of the main clinical issues that we usually see coming about from the RH antibodies in the RH group here is something called hemolytic disease of a newborn. Hemolytic disease of a newborn is a condition that can result in mothers who are RH negative. Mothers who are RH negative obviously have the ability to produce RH antibodies if they are exposed to RH positive blood. Now let's just say this mother becomes pregnant with her first baby. The placenta will keep the mom's blood and baby's blood separate. Essentially, there is no exposure during the first pregnancy. However, once the placenta ruptures and breaks during labor and delivery, blood from the mom will mix with blood from the baby, and mom, who is RH negative, has now been exposed to RH positive blood, and she has met both criteria to produce RH antibodies. Consequently, her body will do so. Baby number one will be born okay, because it takes time to produce those antibodies, and basically labor and delivery shouldn't last long enough for enough antibodies to be produced to become a major issue. However, if we start to look at it in between pregnancies, if nothing is done, mom's body will continue to produce those RH antibodies. If she should go out and get pregnant a second time and that baby also be RH positive, that second child would be in a problematic situation. This is because RH antibodies are much smaller than cells, and those RH antibodies would be capable of passing through the placental barrier, binding to the RH antigen in the baby's blood, and triggering hemolysis or destruction of the baby's red blood cells. Now, obviously, if you can avoid it, you do not want this to happen, so it's usually prevented with a drug called Rogaine. It's an RH antibody inhibitor. I always tell people, make sure you don't confuse it with Rogaine. Rogaine is used to treat male pattern baldness. So Rogaine, that is the drug typically used to prevent this hemolytic disease of a newborn. Now the last thing that we need to kind of get into here with ABO and RH blood groups is blood donation patterns. The blood donation patterns, you need to be able to tell me who could give blood to whom or who could receive blood from whom. And the first step is understanding what is actually being asked of you. So you should understand what's being asked. Are you being asked who that person could donate to or who that person could receive from? And at the end of the day, it's all about avoiding the antigens coming in contact with their antibodies. So I'm going to try and see if I can do this for you on the fly. I want to pull up the Microsoft Word program here. Give me one moment. And I'm going to kind of walk you through some rules that should help you as far as how to figure out ultimately who could give blood to whom. Excuse if you hear the keyboard because I got to type as I do this discussion. Alright, so the first thing you want to figure out is, or the first thing you want to do is understand what you're being asked. So let's just say if given blood type X, alright, so if you're given an unknown type, you want to figure out who they can donate to. How are you going to figure that out? Well, I'm going to give you 5 rules that will help you as far as figuring out who they could donate to. Rule number 1. Rule number 1 is you can always donate to your same ABO blood group. So if your blood type is O, you can give to O. If you're B, you can give to B. If you're A, you can give to A, and so forth on down the line. Rule number 2 says, if your blood type is O, you can be given to all ABO blood groups, or you can donate, I should say, because I'm trying to keep the terminology consistent here. You can donate to all ABO blood groups. So if your blood type is O, you can not only give to O, but you can give to A, B, and AB. Rule number 3 says if blood is A or B, you can donate to AB blood group. Now if you follow these 3 rules, it will get you straight as far as the possible ABO blood groups that a person could donate to. But we still have to consider the Rh antigen. So first up, let's deal with somebody who's Rh positive. If you are Rh positive, you can only donate to people whose blood is Rh positive. But the 5th rule says if that person is Rh negative, you can donate to all Rh groups. It doesn't matter whether that person will be positive or negative if the blood that you're giving them is Rh negative. So let's work a couple of examples here, and the first one I'm going to give you is an individual who is A positive. And we want to figure out who they can donate blood to. If we follow rule number 1, it says we can give to the same ABO blood group, so we have to put A. If we look at rule number 2, it says that the blood type is O. Well, this is an O, so we don't worry or concern ourselves with that. If we look at rule 3, it says that the blood is A or B, we have to donate it to somebody who is type AB. So we can also put down here AB. That is the complete list, only A and B, of people that a person who is A positive could donate to. Now we also have to consider the Rh status. So if we look at rule 4, it says if the blood is Rh positive, which this is, it can only donate to individuals who are also Rh positive. So we come in and put in the positives, and there's a complete list of people that a person who is A positive could donate to. They could donate to somebody who's A positive, and they could also donate to an individual who is AB positive. That's it. Nobody else could receive blood from that individual. I'm going to do one more example here, and that's for a person who is O negative. Who could that individual donate to? Well, let's follow the rules. Rule number 1 says that you can always donate to your same ABO type, so we'd have to put O. We get to rule number 2, and according to rule number 2, we have to put all ABO groups. So now we put A, B, and AB, and that completes all of the ABO groups. We go to rule 5, which applies to people who are Rh negative, and it says that if that blood is Rh negative, donate it to all Rh groups. So that means that we could be giving O negative to individuals who are O negative, A negative, B negative, AB negative, and we also have to come in and include all the positive versions of those blood types as well. And that would complete the list of people who could receive blood, or the list of people that a person who is O negative could donate to. If you look at the potential people who could receive blood from somebody who is O negative, it's every possible combination, all 8 possible combinations between the ABO and RH groups. Due to that fact, people who are O negative, they are going to be your universal donor. O negative individuals can have blood donated, at least in our setup, to all individuals. So these are the rules regarding if you're given a given blood type, you can figure out who they can donate blood to. But let's switch it up a little bit. Let's say you're given a blood type, so you're given blood type X. Let's give you rules to figure out who they can receive blood from. So, 5 rules again. Rule number 1 says you can always receive from same ABO blood group. Rule number 2, everyone receives O. I will say everyone receives from the O blood group. And rule number 3 says if blood group is AB, then can receive from all ABO blood groups. Alright, so that will get you the list of complete individuals who a person of a given blood type could receive from. Now we also have to deal with the RH. So if the person's blood is RH positive, if the blood is RH positive, they can receive from all RH blood groups. And if that person is RH negative, they can only receive from the RH negative blood group. I know it's a lot of rules, but let's do an example here again, and let's try to show you how this all works out. So let's do A negative in this situation. And we're going to reverse the direction of the arrow here. Notice we're going towards. So we're trying to figure out who they could receive blood from. If we follow rule number 1, you can always receive from your same ABO blood group. We'd have to put down A. We follow rule number 2. We put down O because everybody receives from O. If the blood group is AB, well, we can stop there with rule 3 because this blood type is A negative. So we've got the possible ABO blood groups that can donate to a person who is A negative. We go to rule number 5, and it says if that blood is RH negative, we can only give them RH negative blood. So we come in and complete our list by putting a negative in behind each one of those blood types. The only people that a person who is A negative could receive from would be somebody who is also A negative. And remember, we said our universal donor is O negative, so they could also receive from O negative. One more example. One more example to also work out here. We're going to do AB positive. We want to know who they could receive from. Well, first up, always receive from your same ABO blood group. So we put AB there. Everybody receives from O, so we put an O. And if the blood type is AB, which it is, then it receives from all ABO blood groups. So let's go ahead and put down A and B. Next, we come to rule 4, and it says if it's RH positive blood, you can receive from all RH groups. So that means that we have to put all the positive versions down. And then to be complete, we must also include all the negative versions as well. So the list of people who could donate or the list of people who AB positive, could receive from would be AB positive, O positive, A positive, B positive, AB neg, O neg, A neg, and D neg. This is all 8 possible combinations once again. So AB positive is our universal recipient. It's the exact counterpart to an individual who is O negative. So hopefully these rules help you out. Like I said, the first thing to do is to try and keep in mind what the question is asking you. And this takes out of context, actually, I guess, it makes the thought process a little bit easier. But what is basically these rules are doing is making sure that you never have the antigen come in contact with this antibody, because the two of those would equal a kill or destruction of red blood cells. So if you thought about it and analyzed it, you could kind of figure it out. But this is all we're doing. We're making sure that this equation is never fulfilled. Why are people who are AB positive the universal recipient? Because people who are AB positive never produce any antibodies. If we take a look back at our little chart here, notice people who are AB don't make either A or B antibodies. And I also told you that in order to make Rh antibodies, you had to be Rh negative, and people who are AB positive, rather, are not Rh negative. So they don't make any antibodies. That's why it doesn't matter what antigens you dump in, the equation could never be fulfilled. Then we look at people who are O negative, they take out the other half of the equation. There's no antigens. So we're just using this equation or avoiding that situation, but at the end of the day, the rules may help you out. So we're going to end there with this whole blood typing discussion. Hope this helps. If you have questions, obviously you can email me.